My name is Iris Temain. I turned 18 yesterday. At my birthday party last night, my dad pulled me aside in the hallway where the light from the living room barely reached. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling. Someone was laughing too loud. He leaned in close, breath smelling like the cheap sparkling cider we were all pretending was champagne, and whispered, "When this is over, you're going to sign some papers for Uncle Wade. Just a formality, sweetheart. Family stuff." I smiled the way I'd practiced in the mirror for weeks. I nodded like a good daughter. Then I walked straight into the kitchen, opened my laptop while the music thumped through the walls, and quietly transferred every penny of my multi-million-dollar inheritance, cabin, savings, investments, into the irrevocable trust my grandparents had built for me 6 years earlier. By the time the last guest left, the cabin at Cedar Lake, the accounts, everything was locked behind a legal wall my family could never touch. This morning they found out. My dad turned the color of old paper. My Uncle Wade, who had already signed a $450,000 purchase agreement with a development company for property he didn't own, started screaming for a lawyer. My mother just stared at me like I'd grown horns. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to know this story isn't really about money. It's about promises, about the difference between something that has value and something that is valuable. Let me take you back 6 years to the summer I turned 12. It was a Thursday in late June. Grandpa Harold picked me up in his old blue Ford truck that smelled of pine resin and motor oil. We drove 40 minutes out of Ridgemont, windows down, country music playing low. The road narrowed, trees grew taller, and suddenly there it was, Cedar Lake. The cabin sat back from the water, tucked among white pines so tall they turned the afternoon into soft green twilight. The porch sagged on the south side like it was tired from holding up memories. The screen door never latched right. It always whispered when you opened it. "Grab the other end, Iris," Grandpa said, already lifting one end of a heavy fence rail. I was small for 12, but I grabbed on. We spent the whole morning replacing 3 rotted posts. He didn't rush me. He taught me how to press my thumb into the wood. If it gave like wet cardboard, the post was done for. We worked side by side, sweat mixing with sawdust, and every time I got something right, he'd say, "That's my girl." Inside, Grandma Vivian had iced tea waiting on the kitchen table Grandpa had built the year they got married. The wood was warm, golden, scarred with decades of family dinners. She patted the chair beside her on the porch, and we sat watching the lake until the light turned honey gold. That evening, Grandpa wiped his hands on a rag and looked at me seriously. "This cabin stays in the family, Iris. But family isn't always blood. Family is whoever shows up." I didn't fully understand him then. I was 12. I thought he was being poetic. He wasn't. That whole summer, I came back every weekend. I learned which window stuck in humid weather, how to bleed the ancient radiator where the water heater liked to leak. In October, Grandma taught me to organize the bookshelves by color because it makes the whole room feel warmer. Grandpa walked me along the property lines, showing me the old iron stakes he'd hammered in himself decades ago. Back home in Ridgemont, everything felt fine. 3 bedrooms, a yard that always needed mowing. My sister Kelsey, 2 years younger, had the bigger room with lavender walls and expensive furniture. My room still had the old carpet from the previous owners. At dinner, my dad, Greg, would bring up the cabin. "Dad's place is just sitting there losing value," he'd say, cutting his steak. "Property taxes are killing us. We should sell it, reinvest." My mom, Denise, would nod. "Makes sense." I'd pipe up, "But Grandpa said the cabin stays in the family." Greg would laugh, never mean, just dismissive. "You were 12, Iris. He was being nice." And the conversation would move on to Kelsey's latest debate trophy or dance recital. My district's science fair ribbon stayed in my backpack. One night, I found a glossy flyer on the counter. Ridgeline Development, lakefront lots, premium prices, a handwritten phone number in the margin. Not my dad's handwriting. I put it back exactly where I found it. Grandpa Harold died 2 years later. I was 14. Gray sky, damp grass, folding chairs sinking into the lawn. I sat in the second row clutching his blue plaid handkerchief that still smelled of pine. At the reception, I saw Greg and Wade by the dessert table, voices low. Wade had a thick folder under his arm. I heard one sentence. We should move on this before probate gets complicated. They were talking about the cabin at the funeral. I said nothing. I was 14. I had no power. Grandma Vivian lasted 2 more years. She got sick in March and was gone by June. The last time I saw her, she held my hand with surprising strength and whispered, "The cabin is yours, Iris. Don't let them take it. Promise me." I promise, Grandma. After her funeral, Greg sat at our kitchen table and said with visible relief, "Now we can finally sort out the property." That night, I realized something cold and heavy. To them, Grandma's death wasn't a loss. It was a clearance. Between 16 and almost 18, the cabin became my quiet rebellion. Every Saturday, I drove out in my beat-up Honda, patched screens, replaced weather stripping, swept pine needles off the roof the way Grandpa taught me. I kept the place alive while my family kept talking about it like it was already money in their pocket. Then, 3 months before my 18th birthday, I got the call. Margaret Caldwell's voice was calm and professional. "Iris, I was your grandparents' attorney. We need to meet. Alone." Her office smelled of old paper and good coffee. She opened a folder and changed my life in 30 seconds. "Your grandparents established an irrevocable trust 6 years ago. The cabin, savings, investments, approximately $2.1 million. You are the sole beneficiary. The title was transferred to the trust while they were still alive. It never entered their estate. Your father and uncle have no claim." I felt the room tilt. She slid documents across the desk. My name, their names, dates from 6 years ago. Grandpa's words, relayed by Margaret. "My sons will sell that cabin before the funeral flowers wilt." He had been right. Margaret warned me that someone had been making inquiries at the county recorder's office. I started paying attention, quietly. I overheard Wade and Greg in the garage planning a quitclaim deed. Wade had already signed the purchase agreement with Ridgeline for $450,000. They were going to file the moment I turned 18 and give me $50,000 for college. I texted Margaret, "They're accelerating." Her reply, "Stay the course." The night before my birthday, I drove to the cabin alone. The lake was black glass under a half moon. I sat in Grandpa's chair on the porch and cried. Not loud, just quiet tears that had been waiting years to fall. At midnight, I signed the acceptance of successor beneficiary form on a video call with Margaret. From that moment, I was in control. The next morning, my 18th birthday, Margaret filed the Ellis pendens at 8 a.m. The title was frozen. At 9:05 a.m., Wade and Greg walked into the recorder's office with their forged quitclaim deed and confident smiles. The clerk looked at the screen and said the words that ended their plan. "I can't record this. The property is held in the T. Main Family Irrevocable Trust. A Ellis pendens was filed this morning." I wasn't there, but I can still picture their faces. The birthday party that afternoon became a battlefield. Greg stood up in front of 20 guests and announced, "As a family, we've decided to sell the cabin." I set my fork down. The clink echoed. "I never agreed to sell the cabin, Dad." The room went dead silent. Later, in the kitchen, the fight exploded. Threats, tears, accusations. My mother asked how I could do this to the family. My father said if I fought them, I was on my own. No college help, no home. I looked him in the eye and said, "I am part of this family. I'm the part that keeps promises." The consequences came fast. Ridgeline sued Wade for breach of contract, $45,000 penalty plus damages. The forged notary stamp triggered a criminal referral. His real estate license was suspended. The whole small town knew within days. Greg had to sell the store at a loss. Denise went back to work. The house survived, barely. I moved into the cabin. One Sunday in May, Kelsey showed up with a pizza. We sat on the porch eating pepperoni while a heron fished in the shallows. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." "You were a kid, Kelsey. We both were." She looked at Grandpa's empty chair. "Can I come back sometimes?" "Anytime." Early June. 6 a.m. I'm on the porch with coffee. Mist rises off the lake. A loon calls. 2 long, haunting notes. I think about Grandpa's letter I found in the desk drawer. I chose you not because you're perfect, but because you're the one who asked whether the roof needed patching before you ever asked what the place was worth. Take care of it. It took care of you first. I kept my promise. I didn't win against my family. There's no winning when the people who hurt you are the ones who were supposed to protect you. But I stood on solid ground. Ground my grandparents prepared for me years before I needed it. Sometimes the people who protect you aren't standing in front of you. Sometimes they planned for you quietly, years ago, and all you have to do is show up and sign the paper. If you're listening and you feel alone, I want you to know someone, somewhere, might have already built the shelter. You just have to be brave enough to walk into it. That's my story.